We're going to start our miniature with a black primer, and that's going to be very important because we're going to be slap chopping this mini. Typically with a slap chop, you're going to be dry brushing white or various grades of white, such as grays, over your black, but for this I'm just going to be airbrushing on some white paint. Now I'm not going to be doing a full saturated layer with this white paint. I'm just going to be gradually applying it while applying more, almost a full layer to that area where that sun is going to hit. So a large portion of the front will be white, but the back will kind of be a 50-50, and you can see the end result here. We're going to start with the white, and for that we're going to be using the contrast paint Gryph-Charger Gray. Apothecary white contrast might also work, but it'll provide less shadowing than the Gryph-Charger. And we're going to apply this thin down with a contrast medium. The contrast medium will prevent it from being too thick and will allow our white that we applied to really show through. And with the contrast, you're really going to slather it on everywhere, but you do want to avoid pooling, so if you see it pooling up too heavily, make sure you clean that up. Moving on to the red, we will be applying Blood Angels Red contrast paint. Be careful and go slow so you don't hit your areas that you've already painted with that Gryph-Charger Gray. Next we'll be going on to that blue with Thalasar Blue. And then for the Sword Striker parts, we will be painting that with Storm Fiend contrast. Now the Storm Fiend contrast is quite a bit darker than I wanted, so you may want to consider thinning it down more than I did so that it shows more of that white through. For the V-fin, we will paint it with Imperial Fist contrast paint. The Strike Gundam only has the top part of the V-fin painted yellow, so make sure you don't do it all. Then we will go in with Black Templar contrast paint and paint on all of those kind of metal cagey areas that the Strike Gundam's design really features. Once again, make sure you're going slow and being careful so you don't get that black on your white painted areas. And this is the finish of the slap chop, and it looks pretty respectable if you want a quick tabletop ready model. But that's not what I'm about, so we're going to be doing a lot more brushwork. And we're going to start with the white, and I'm going to talk about the white for quite a bit of time here, but the ideas that we're talking about really apply to all the other areas while we paint them as well. So I'm starting off by mixing Sky Gray by AK 3rd Gen with our Gryph-Charger Gray contrast paint. We're going to want to make sure that our paint is thin, and we're going to apply it slowly and methodically over the white that we built up with that slap chop. You'll use the mixture to build up your foundation and then slowly add less of that Gryph-Charger Gray to get it to a brightness that you want. And there's really no correct answer to how much brightness you want, but generally you want to be thinking in volume. As I paint this leg, I want to make sure that it's going to be darker than the upper body, and that's really for two reasons. The first is that the sun is going to hit the upper body more. It's just a matter of exposure, and right here in the video we can see that I'm painting the back, and that formula includes a lot more Gryph-Charger Gray than Sky Gray. There's a lot less sun back here, so I want it a lot darker. That doesn't mean it should be absent of highlight, but we want a lot less. If you're unsure how dark to keep it, work on your other areas that you want lighter and then come back just to see how it contrasts. And you can see here the difference between where I'm applying highlights as to the sunlight hitting as opposed to where it's not hitting. We then move on with just pure Sky Gray, and we're going to be doing chunky edge highlights with it. And going back to the reason why we are highlighting more on the upper body, the first being the sunlight, the second will be we want to pull the viewer's eyes towards that upper body. So while you're applying these highlights, make sure that you are more aggressive and your lines are a bit more bold than when you are highlighting the lower body. But once again, that doesn't mean ignore the lower body. I've got the knee and the shin guard and a little bit of the foot highlighted down here. Next, we will continue that highlight with a mixture of our Sky Gray and a pure white. Be careful with how much you highlight with that white. We want our machine to be white, but we don't want it aggressively white. Those shadows definitely matter. And now I'm done with the white, and you can see how much I highlighted this top area. But the left arm has some more shadows because it's further from the light source than the right arm. Similarly, the right leg has more highlighting than the left leg. It's really important to keep a balance of those values, and that will really elevate your paint scheme. Also, you can see how dark I left the back side. And that's okay because less sun and people don't look at it as much. We'll continue on with the blue with a wash of Abyss Blue by 2 thin coats. I thought the Talisar Blue was too bright, so I'm doing a very heavy wash. So I'll be very thorough, darkening it down. We're then going to take Elysian Blue by 2 thin coats, mix a little bit of that Abyss Blue in, and do some edge highlightings with that. These can be chunkier because we will highlight a little bit more after this. To further highlight, we'll take a little bit of that Sky Gray and add it to our Elysian Blue. And we will highlight that with as thin lines as you can muster. We'll then move on to the red, and I like Warhammer Colors red, so we'll use Mephiston red. And once again, think in volumes and leave areas that need to be dark, dark. We can then follow that up with some chunky edge highlights of Evil Sun Scarlet. And you'll do a final edge highlight of Wild Rider red. It's quite the orange color, so don't go too overboard. For the yellow, we will build it up with 2 thin coats Skulker Yellow, painting towards the tip of the V-fin, as well as the very bottom of the V-fin to define that edge. We'll then use Serpent Eye Yellow, which is the same color I used for the eyes, and we will highlight the tips as well as a teeny bit on that lower edge. We'll then move on to the Sword Striker pack, and for this you really want to think about what we did with the white. We're going to be mixing in that Storm Fiend with 2 thin coats Frost Blue, and you're going to gradually apply it over the entirety of the Sword Striker pack. And I'm going a bit heavier because, like I said earlier in the video, that Storm Fiend was dark for my taste, and I feel like the Frost Blue really works well for the Sword Strike pack's colors. Speaking of which, when you're done with the previous step, you'll begin to do chunky edge highlights with pure Frost Blue. And once again, think back to the white, think back to values, think about how much light and dark you want, kind of playfully work between the two, and just go slow and have fun with it. Layering and blending like this is definitely my favorite part of painting. And then we'll finish off the striker pack with some fine edge highlights of Frost Blue mixed with a pure white. Once again, get these lines thin as possible, but you can go thicker in areas that will have more light hitting them, such as this sword blade. The beam is emitting a lot of light here, so it's okay for this edge that I'm painting to have a really thicker edge highlight of this bright color. And to start off the beam blade of the anti-ship sword, we're going to base it with pure white, which we'll follow up with pink fluorescent paint. I'm using Cuttlefish Colors Pink Dragon, but any pink fluorescent should work just as well. And I'll apply this fairly heavily. The white was there to brighten it up and make it easier to paint on. Following that, we will take Murderous Magenta Contrast, thin it down a little bit, and then apply it towards those interior edges of the beam blade. We'll then follow it up with mixing pure white into our pink fluorescent and highlighting the center of that blade. And to make it even brighter, you can add more white in a second highlight step. I'm done with the guide, and if you bring your model to this point, you're going to be super stoked with how good it looks. I'm super stoked. But I'm going to be entering the Mecha May competition with this. Mecha May is a friendly little painting competition with some neat prizes that happens in May. You don't have to paint your miniature or even Gundam model, full model, in May to enter. But look them up on Instagram. They have a Discord. Find it and enter. I encourage you to. Like I said, I'm going to be, so I took this model a little bit higher than what this video showed, just by easing in some of those blends on my rougher kind of transitions from shadow to light, as well as bringing some of the highlights up higher, notably like the beam sabers. The center of that's much brighter in my finished paint job. Sometimes it's okay to go a little harder, and honestly I don't go too much harder with this mini. It's definitely not like a Golden Demon entry or anything, but I had fun with it. I hope you all liked this video. If you did, like, subscribe, leave a comment, catch my next one. I'll see you in the next one.